was Judy and Punch, which is a fictional origin story of the British traditional puppet show Punch and Judy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Punch!
I'm an artist. The greatest puppeteer of his generation.
It seems some folk are getting squeamish around here.
So, Jim, tell us a little bit about the film and what you thought about it.
So this is quite a strange one, I found. We'll discuss in a minute, but basically, where we open in the town of, I think it's called Seaside, a fictional place, which seems to be in some pseudo-medieval time in some indeterminate location. I think Mirrah Foulkes and the production is Australian, but there's a whole variety of accents kicking around this place.
Australia, I think it was.
Victoria.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And basically we find ourselves with Judy, played by Mia Wasikowska, and Punch, played by Damon Herriman, who most people might have actually recognised for he was playing Charles Manson in Mindhunter, and I think also Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's been in a whole bunch of stuff, but that's a recent thing. And they are playing the title pairing of Judy and Punch. And basically the entire town is very into their puppet show, which basically appears as kind of like the classic Punch and Judy show that we see. The relationship is clearly a little abusive. It's not quite sunshine and light, shall we say. And basically you have this situation where Punch is kind of basking in the glory of this show and the adulation he's getting, but the actual talent behind it is Judy, and she's not really getting the due credit. I'm not going to give too much away, but I mean, if you've ever seen a Punch and Judy show, you know that it's actually quite violent in its own way. So needless to say, that kind of plays into it, and as we say, we kind of get this like live action dramatization of that relationship in the context of this very meta thing with the puppet show. So I'm very interested to see what you thought, because there's bits I like about this film, there's bits that I didn't feel quite worked. I think it's a very interesting film though, particularly in kind of like a lot of stuff it deals with. So what did you guys make of it?
So it was a weird one. Anything that Mia Wasikowska's in, I'm usually quite interested in, because it's kind of very surreal, and she is exceptionally headstrong. As any character she plays, she's very headstrong, she's kind of very profound, very feminist, and she's also very kind as well. She embodies so many great values, and in a film that deals with a lot of violent subject matter, I think she takes this on really, really well. And it's almost a very kind of Me Too-esque film, because everyone knows like Punch and Judy, it's back to 16th century Italy, and basically Punch bludgeoning everyone to death half the time. So it's interesting how it takes a very kind of violent historic story that they wanted to set it in a very European context despite filming in Victoria and Australia, and how they deal with the fact that it's like puppet shows have always been a big entertainment factor for audiences, and that kind of violence in arenas has always been a interesting subject matter. And it's how you find how Mia's character kind of, as Judy, kind of finds this empowerment in this very kind of slightly misogynistic and violent setting, and it's very mystical, it's very hazy, and I don't know, I enjoyed it, but then I didn't enjoy it at the same time. I think there's elements of it that just, it's uncomfortable to watch at times, and it's very brutal, and that's kind of how you feel about it. You're a bit like, oh, this is just not nice to watch, but then the way that they interact with each other as well is also really fascinating. So it's one of those typical films where I'm a bit like, I don't know if I'm like what I'm watching, but it's a really brilliant film.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense that there's parts of it I really enjoyed, and I don't know enough. I've never seen a Punch and Judy puppet show, and didn't really know necessarily the history of that and like British culture and like by the seaside and whatnot. But I did find I found it an interesting thing, again, taking some sort of classic sort of story and then revisiting it with a new perspective, and I thought that part of it worked well, perhaps much better than what we were talking about with Hollywood, but the other parts were just a bit bizarre. It was just, like, how it was a bizarre film to be talking about domestic violence, and sometimes I just didn't find that those conversations matching, perhaps the same way that we were discussing in our previous review. Jim, how about you?
Broadly, I liked it. There are bits of it that I feel don't work. I think one of the things that it just about pulls off, right? It doesn't quite, but I think one of the things it nearly pulls off is the tone, and it's a very weird tone it's trying to balance, right? Because there is a dramatic impulse here. There is quite a lot of brutality, as Elle said, in particular. I mean, let's be quite clear, right? If you've ever seen a Punch and Judy show, right, you know that at some point in this film, Judy's going to get beaten up, right? That is not pleasant. At the same time, it does have this kind of like this strand of dark comedy going through the whole thing, just in the way that kind of like the local community try to pin the violence on, like random people who really have nothing to do with it. Just kind of like this ridiculous kind of like thirst for violent justice that the town seems to have. There's this kind of element of dark, kind of like gallows humor, almost quite literally, going through the whole thing, and I think it does that quite well. And it reminded me of like some classic British TV series. Like, it was actually quite Blackaddery at points, just in kind of like some of the way it tries to deal with some of the humor there. And I think it doesn't quite manage to gel kind of like the drama and the brutality with that perfectly, but I think it did by and large a pretty good job. Where it starts to go a little bit off the rails is a little bit towards the end, where I think it starts to go for this like hyper-real feel, and that's kind of there throughout, but it in particular tries to go for it towards the end. There's one scene in particular where, without giving too much away, like somebody kind of like rides in on a horse and flies off, and it just looks ridiculous. Like to me it looked silly, right, and not in a way where it kind of like married up with it. So I enjoyed it. I think Mia Wasikowska's performance is very good. I think kind of like this little community of people she finds herself in from about a third of the way through the film to the end is also very interesting. I think Damon Herriman's performance is one of kind of like this ridiculous, arrogant hubris, and the way that he kind of believes his own press almost, and the way that he gets found out. I think that's also a very interesting performance. I think it's well done. And I think the ridiculous, amped up humour aspects, by and large, work. I just think it's just a case of it. I just feel like it needed like one more go round in the edit suite, or one more go round in the script, and it could have maybe blended its different elements a little better. So broadly speaking, I liked it. I liked what it was trying to achieve, and I think it does quite a good job, but it just doesn't quite balance all the different aspects for me. I think it could have woven them together with a little more. I don't want to say skill, because I think it takes a lot of skill to get it to the point it's already at. But I think it's more just it doesn't quite reach the level it wants to.
The one thing I do really love about it though is the way it's shot. It's Stefan Duccio cinematography, and he's got such a brilliant eye for kind of slightly aged films, because he uses a really specific film grain, and they use really old the oldest version of cameras they can get, because they really wanted to shoot it on film to give it a much more kind of authentic, grainy feel, and that's what works so much with kind of slightly kind of medieval style filming, but instead like used a really clever pattern of layering and stuff, and so visually it works well. And also he's worked with Mia a lot before, and so those relationships actually make it look quite stunning, and that kind of does work for me. It's one of those films that stylistically is quite enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I would agree that it is very stylistically beautiful to watch. And I think I've said this in the past with some other, I believe this is the first feature for the director. And, I think it was Beats where there was a lot of, this didn't work perfectly or this didn't work perfectly. When it's a first feature and it's this high quality, and yeah, maybe it needed a little bit of work on the, like, in the edit room. I mean, that's really fabulous. It shows that we can expect great things from this director. And I think I just maybe read something right before watching this about like the history of public shaming, and and I do think that was so part of a really well done sort of like theme that went on in this town that was just quick to shame women and and these old these people. And then there's this one, maybe I'm just really into earnest things right now because I liked Hollywood for its earnestness, but the constable character, like every time you found him in the crowd, I was just really engaged with that character because it was the light and the in the crazy world that was this seaside town that isn't on this seaside, so also bizarre. But there's some other little bizarre moments that I just wanted to pull out that were fun, like the Tai Chi, like in the woods, and there were just these kind of segments that kind of took you away, and that Yorgos Lanthimos kind of, I don't know, way to me where I was like, oh, this is fun, and it's it's a new film. It's not it's doing something different and bizarre, and I'm liking where it's going. So I think it's worth the look, and I think we all do here. So give it a whirl and let us know what you think.